When the earth is ravaged and animals are dying, a new tribe of people will come onto the earth from many colors, creeds, classes, and who by their action shall make the earth green again.
Learn or teach people the sacred ways, turn the sacred, how to talk to the trees, how to honor the plants.
Om Hrim Aham Namaha Kshim Swaha. Om Aim Klim Sohu. Sohu Klim Aim.
G'day, gorgeous, groovy, gardening guardians of the earth. This is the first part in a series on magic in the garden. In part 1, we will be discussing natural magic in the garden, the incidental magic that's always happening in the gardens we create. And we all know of the uplifting, magical, healing effects that come from spending time in the natural world, in forests with plants, in water, on rocks and earth, with our animal friends. The good feelings that come from spending time in nature are just our realignment back into our natural state, because we are a part of nature. We are one with the natural world. So many humans have disassociated from that larger part of themselves as the earth, as one being. It can seem really magical rediscovering who and what we really are in the natural, true reality, and then to create a life built from that foundation. That journey of ascension through realignment with Mother Earth seems so magical, yet at the same time it's actually the most normal part of ourselves, showing us that indeed we are magical beings, connected and one with everything. It's really how we think about ourselves in relation to everyone and everything else around us that creates the reality we experience. And like I said, the further our beliefs stray from true nature reality, from the reality of Mother Earth, which we are just a small part of, the more energy is drained from the environment, from the ecosystems, from ourselves to prop up our failed ideas or systems, when we could in fact be using nature herself as the blueprint to redesign our systems so that they are aligned and in balance with all life around us and the earth as a whole. This isn't about trying to find a more sustainable way for humanity to continue. It's about falling back into alignment with the larger part of ourselves, so we are living as one with the force that sustains all life, becoming sustainers of life ourselves, using the natural world as a living blueprint, an interactive instruction manual on how to live our lives and to accomplish our goals in peace and harmony with the rest of creation. And this natural instruction manual becomes literal when working with nature in our gardens this way. We can take ideas from what we see working in the natural world and incorporate them into our own gardens, backyards, veggie patches, whatever kind of gardening project you're doing. After all, the natural systems have had billions of years to evolve and perfect Earth's ecosystems. We can take advantage of all that information by learning to read nature, by copying and pasting what we see working in the natural world into our own garden projects. And permaculture is an encyclopedia of different natural methods the earth uses to build healthy ecosystems, alongside the science and countless examples of how to combine and speed up these processes. And with so many people practicing permaculture worldwide and adding their personal spin and discoveries, there's just so much information and inspiration floating around out there in the permaculture scene, all based on natural fertility building, ecosystem building, soil building techniques modeled from Mother Earth herself. Now, if using the laws of nature, the ways of Mother Earth to build your garden seems daunting, there's always the practical side of permaculture to fall back on for ideas and inspirations. This journey of ascension through realignment with our Mother Earth seems so magical, yet at the same time it's actually the most normal part of ourselves shining through. And through this journey, we get to see how magical we are in this web of creation and find ourselves a sense of purpose and belonging in reality. Just as our human body is largely comprised of microorganisms, we need this microscopic life to be living in harmonic balance, to be healthy ourselves, just as the body of Mother Earth needs us, small as we may be, to be living in harmonic balance with all the other life forms around us so her body can be healthy. When we redesign our lives and gardens to flow with the current of life, the living body of Mother Earth is healed and restored. So, how do we bring this natural magic into our own gardening projects? Well, consider that a gardener working in alignment with the laws of nature would naturally become an extension of nature in human form, their true self, evolving from gardener into earth guardian, restoring natural ecosystems while accomplishing their own gardening goals. So the first step is to see yourself as a part of this system that really is you. And with your human body and intelligence, figure out how you can use the environment around you to ignite or speed up a fertility ecosystem that works for you and the surrounding environment. So a good first step on a practical level is to note that nature's natural ecosystems feed back into themselves. They create a self-perpetuating cycle of growth, abundance, and biodiversity. So instead of gardening, instead of propping up a failing finite system, we need to become guardians of the elements, the factors for the natural systems we're creating to grow and sustain themselves, figuring out and implementing different eco-gardening methods so our ecosystems become more and more stable, so our eco-gardens become more and more stable. And yes, this does require actual gardening work, but because we're creating self-perpetuating systems, the work will decrease over time unless you keep building more and more gardens or helping more and more ecosystems to revive themselves. And if all goes well, in some situations you do want them to completely take care of themselves, like regeneration project. Now, the design of our human world generally interrupts these natural cycles from taking place around us, but as guardians we can set about correcting what we can while creating our eco-gardens. So nature doesn't waste anything. It doesn't order in bags or bottles of fertility taken from other ecosystems elsewhere in the world. It uses what is readily available. Now, in most situations, there's more than enough organic matter going to waste for us to start natural soil fertility systems in our own garden. In nature, over time, organic matter naturally breaks down and builds soil. So we can set about doing that ourselves with the organic matter in our own environment. So, if you're starting a new garden, you might want to bury all of your garden waste back into your soil. And if you need more, you can collect fallen leaves or ask neighbors for their garden waste. run your food scraps through the soil, or my favorite thing to do is collect weeds and bury them under the garden to get an eco garden going. Most of our common garden weeds are actually Mother Nature's band-aid, creating the lacking nutrients. So there's a good chance the weeds in your local area have the perfect balance of nutrients for your soil. Even really bad weeds that you can't return back into the soil, they can be burnt and then the ashes return back to the soil. Plants are full of minerals and we always want to be returning as much as we can back to the earth. You could see this way of gardening as a new mindset, or you could take it as a challenge to see if you can incorporate all you need for your soil and plants from your surrounding environment, just like nature does. After you've fed the soil, you can use more organic waste as mulch. You can use leaves, chopped up weeds, or chop back in your own garden waste from the new plants you've planted. And by feeding the soil with the organic waste that is naturally around you, you invite all the underground life that will do a lot of the soil work for you, just as they do it in nature for all the big forests and jungles, all those big ecosystems, all that microbial and fungal life underneath those forests are turning the soil, moving nutrients around and breaking down the organic matter. So we're replicating that mighty underground system of quintillions of life forms that perpetuate fertility naturally. Then after we introduce plants into the garden system, they become of the cycle as well, shedding more leaves and more biomatter onto the soil, eventually feeding itself into abundance. And again, we can use our human intelligence and select plants that are designed by nature to repair soil and build fertility, annuals or biannuals that just live for a year or two, but then their decaying roots and plant matter are specially designed to pave the way for more tender plants, more heavy feeders that like more fertile soil. So after developing really healthy soil to grow in by using divine mimicry, mimicking Mother Earth's soil building methods, we can start to plant seeds and plants in strategic ways, using nature again as an example, so our plants are taking full advantage of our unique garden conditions, if not creating the nature style conditions we need to grow what we'd like to grow in a natural way. And after we've recreated this magical system from the ground up, we ensure a strong foundation based on the laws of nature herself. So now we as creative beings can let our imaginations run wild on what kind of eco-garden we'd like to create. And there's so many different eco-natural permaculture ways to do it. And this is where we become one with the magic and start to visualize what we'd like to achieve in our gardens. Yet at the same time working in alignment with nature. As you build your fantasy, it's also important to stay in tune, notice what's working and what's not, be open to change, make it easier on yourself by listening to what nature is asking for, or by creating the natural condition to support what you're asking for. It can be a fun game to see how independent your garden can truly be, which leaves you with more time to enjoy natural magic in your garden, just like you would in the forest or in the wild. All gardens have some natural magic, but to bring that wild natural magic that permeates through the forests and bushlands and jungles of earth into your own gardening projects is a whole nother level of vibration. You could say there's a natural magical, innate goodness behind the laws of nature, creating these natural, beautiful ecosystems all over the earth, these self-perpetuating systems growing in abundance and biodiversity, and that we are one with this creation, one with Mother Earth, one with the whole Mother Universe, and from a higher viewpoint, we are lost in a speck of light that is our galaxy. Yet we can use the laws that are working behind this creation to amplify our natural garden magic even more. The fundamental patterns and building blocks of life are working on a sacred mathematical equation through all living things, through all things. If you're new to this, you can educate yourself on the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence, the flower of life, sacred mathematics, sacred geometry that all life forms use to build themselves from, the pattern of cell division, the flower of life, like I said. These formulas are also reflected through the geometry of life, sacred geometry, sound, frequency, music, and the color spectrum. The fundamentals of nature are working through all life. And the more we can recognize this, we can use that knowledge to consciously incorporate these other aspects of nature into our gardens. Like we can use sacred geometry in our garden designs, incorporating in the magnetic poles, following our own inspiration and research what our gardening ancestors have done through the ages when they've been working with the laws of nature. We can use sound, sacred instruments, singing bowls. We can chant mantras, play blissful sacred frequencies in our gardens. We can experiment with all this different sound vibration to see how our plants and the environment respond. We can also go back and look at the research that scientists have done with sound and plants. We can play with color by using different flowers, different colored plants, different garden decorations, and rocks and crystals. There's strong examples of sacred geometry growing just like plants, only much slower. And plants themselves also have their own sacred geometry patterns working through them. And sometimes we can see them with our own eyes in the growth patterns of different plants. All this divine science, divine maths and geometry are all vibrating out these solid, healthy frequencies all the time, which we can align ourselves to simply by spending time in nature, spending time by the plants, by the elements, by these natural life forms. Different types of meditations are also complementary and enhanced by being in this magical eco-garden system while meditating. In fact, because we're meditating in a garden radiating with all these stable, growing life frequencies, our souls, our energy bodies are stabilized and nourished and guided along natural, healthy frequency paths of life within our meditation visualizations. And just like this natural frequency scale guides the Earth's ecosystems to higher and higher states of perfection, in our meditations we too are also guided by these energies to higher natural states of perfection, supported by our magical garden while we reclaim, remember, and realign with our oneness with the Great Mother, with God, with Goddess, with the universe, with the megaverse, with the multiverse, with the micro, macro, miniverse, with the great I am, with the all intelligence, however you see everything, the conscious life force that runs through all of this creation. And I choose to use Mother Earth, the Great Mother, Mother Universe, and Green Tara, because the information I'm sharing with you was given to me, was communicated, downloaded to me through that Mother Earth, that Mother Goddess, Green Tara, vibration, life force, energy spirit. So this is how the information was presented to me, and this is how I'm sharing it back to you, even though I know there's infinite ways to interpret God. Now, I'm painting a large backdrop here for natural magic in the garden, but like I said, this is how the Great Mother presented it to me, so I'm passing on the understanding as it was given to me years ago when I was beginning to work with these systems. And in truth, all these teachings are just inspirational because we are all a part of this energy, this life force, and just by consciously trying to live in alignment with this truth, we will be guided on the right things to do, on how to build our eco gardens naturally. Because our reasons, our environment, our goals will all require a uniquely tailored eco plan channeled through you, as mine was through me, through my intention to create a garden by using the systems of nature while being of benefit to all life around me. So my garden was of benefit to all life around me, including myself, in the form of a beautiful environment, an environment for my cat, and fresh organic food and herbs that I can eat and share with friends and family. It's all about becoming one with yourself, becoming one with Mother Earth, literally becoming Mother Earth in human form and working from that space. There are so many magical ingredients we can find in nature: shells, sand, weeds, the list goes on, but water is a very magical ingredient we need for our gardens, and we should always find a natural water source to feed our gardens if we need to water them. We can acquire water from rivers, from lakes, from dams, from springs. We can collect our own rainwater if we don't have a rainwater system. If we have leaky gutters, we can put bins, tubs, containers, and catch that fallen water. We can remove the piping from our gutters and put tanks, put steel bins, put whatever kind of large container to collect the water that would otherwise just be going down the drain, mixing with all that dirty water from the roads, just going to waste. So we want clean, fresh, wild, alive water. We can also activate water by singing, by chanting, by holding water, by envisioning love as we're pouring water onto our plants. We can chant Om to our water to activate it, and this is especially good if we're forced to use water from the tap, treated water that's been through the piping system. We can bless it before we put it onto our garden and as it goes onto our garden. Just as nature's ecosystems recycle their own biomatter back into themselves to build abundance, they also make the most of the water passing through them. Not only is natural wild water free, but it's healthier for your plants. Water is alive and holds geometry, so we can play around with some of the things I've been talking about. This is how you can mix it up. I'm soaking seeds in wild water with the crystal. Now I'm going to hit them with some vibration with these tuning forks, tuned to the Schumann resonance. So you can play around with all these things, all these magical ingredients of life, combine them, get inspired, do it your own way. Using nature as an example, we too can make the most of the natural water around us. Another aspect of natural magic in the garden is being able to see the natural cycles within our own lives as metaphors through the garden. And this is a very old type of wisdom, the precursor to a lot of old spiritualities and religions. These metaphors taken from nature, from the natural systems, they're strewn through all different religious and spiritual texts. These timeless lessons from Mother Earth cross all boundaries, races, religions, borders. They are time out of mind and are often the most understandable and relatable teachings within these texts. And when you can see the truth of these teachings with your own eyes playing out through nature, you know that the truth goes far beyond the text itself. Again, you don't need to learn or memorize any of these teachings because it's natural garden magic. It does happen naturally. And even though there is great wisdom in these eco teachings, your own personal relationship with the ecosystem of life will give you your own wisdom to grow with and to share with others. How do we develop this relationship with life where we can use our natural eco gardens to guide us, to heal us, to inspire and uplift us? The act of creating a natural eco garden itself is a great first step. A step into a deeper relationship, and then spending time working with and enjoying your eco garden is also the perfect setting for that energy, for that conversation between you and the living environment to be clearly heard. The garden, especially an eco garden, is usually buzzing, vibrating with life and biodiversity. It almost forces our attention into the now when admiring a plant, flower, insect or animal, watching a bird enjoy the space, or noticing something that needs tending to. Then while spending time, we naturally project our frustrations, difficulties, problems, questions onto what we're seeing or doing in the eco garden. Then by watching nature play itself out or working to improve the garden, we find there's a metaphorical solution playing out in front of us through metaphors, through a metaphorical conversation that's happening between us and the great intelligence. And by being brought into the now moment, we aren't distracted by the past or the future. This brings instant relief and the space for new information and the new natural truth we see reflected back to us through our gardens. It's also highly symbolic, speaking the language of the subconscious mind, which is another reason why these teachings strike so deep when they happen to us personally. And this is a natural, normal experience people have every day in nature, in the forest, by the river, by the ocean. But we can also have this magic in our own backyard by using the same systems in our own way. Many have also found that they find answers to their questions by spending time in nature. They just walk away with the clarity whether they know how they got it or not. This all relates back to syncing up with those sacred geometry patterns, the golden ratio, Fibonacci sequence, the flower of life, the sacred geometry frequency patterns that are permeating from these natural eco-environments. Again, falling back into alignment with this system, even though it's so grand and magical, we can also see ourselves as grand and magical beings in the circle of life. Explore who we really are in this true reality of existence, becoming more and more one with the environment, just like animals and other creatures of the earth are. And if you grow your own food and eat from your garden, your body starts building itself, literally, physically, from that healthy ecosystem radiating with healthy sacred frequencies that are climbing the ladder of perfection. You start becoming physically one with the eco garden, with the natural magic. Through gardening, learning, and living this way, I did receive messages from Mother Earth, the great Mother Goddess. Also, Green Tara came through, and the eco info that was downloaded through me is that this natural magic is very profound. It is at the core of everything in this reality, and it can heal humanity and the earth of all the big problems we face together at the moment, like the environmental damage, the worldwide health crisis of starvation, obesity, and every sickness in between that shouldn't be or doesn't have to be, poverty, war, and that's just to name a few of our current worldwide issues. And they can all be solved by redirecting our focus onto healing the world's natural ecosystems, because within those natural ecosystems is our natural state of health and happiness. We've spoken in depth about how to spark this magical system within your own gardens and gardening projects. The natural system naturally works with us to help us grow from perfection to perfection, using this beautiful natural scale of vibrational frequency that runs through all life, through all things in this reality. But that's just one part of the natural magic, because we are this natural magic. We are just as miraculous as all the other creatures, the animals, the plants. We're literally a part of the wildlife here on Earth. And just like the microbes that we need to keep our own bodies healthy, we are the microbes along with all the other wildlife. We are the microbes on the living being of Mother Earth, swimming through the cosmic ocean. We are this magic, and to literally and consciously live the oneness, to be the oneness in the moment, is really the key to leveling up in this magical experience of life. So instead of approaching the natural world like an outsider coming for help or coming to take something, embrace your true self. Embrace the truth that you're coming home for realignment. And that will look different for all of us. For some people, truly entering the nature dimension will be to become like an animal, to crawl around, to climb trees, to swim, to hunt, to forage, to make things, bushcraft. Some people will meditate, some people will study, some people will explore. Some people will communicate with the nature beings, the animals, the insects, the fungi, the trees, the spirits. Some people will get all dressed up and throw grand garden parties, lunches and dinners made from the fresh produce in their garden. Or some people will live out a mixture of all these things and more. The trick is to do what feels right in the moment, to sing, to dance, to sunbathe, whatever feels good, with the mindset that you are completely accepted here. Just like the animals and the plants, you are one with this environment, created by this environment. And just like the animals and plants and all the other creatures, you can shamelessly be yourself. And who you are is what feels good in the moment. And what feels good and natural will naturally change, grow, and develop. So enter your magical garden as the human animal you are. Even when you're doing chores, there are lots of creatures, lots of animals and insects, plants and fungi on the earth who have their chores and duties as a part of the system, as a part of the ecosystem. So even when working in the garden, let it be a spiritual and an enlightening way to hop through dimensions, to shift through dimensions. And the further up you go in frequency, the more magic is available. And like we said before, we may not always be in the mindset. We might be going through something. We might be depressed, we might be angry, we might be anxious, and then we can let the garden help us to realign to a base level of just feeling good. But when we can enter the garden, the ecosystem, feeling good or better, we can really jump frequencies and enter truly magical realities. And I'll have to give you some examples of what it's like entering higher dimensions through nature. It's quite natural. This is about natural magic. It's not something you have to try to do. That's why I'm saying do what feels good in the moment. Don't be religious about it or strict, like I have to do this every day in nature to connect and be a magical being. No, it's not like that. Whatever feels good in the moment, even if you do something every day for 10 years, as soon as it stops feeling good, you may have evolved to a higher level where a new practice or a new activity now feels good and is the right thing that's feeding your soul and giving you that happiness, that purpose in the moment to be doing what you're doing, so you're not doing anything out of responsibility, guilt, or shame. Now, like I said, as you rise into higher frequencies of nature, into different realities where different things are possible, different experiences start to happen. Again, these experiences will be unique to you, but are also shared by many, if that makes sense. For instance, meditation and channeling in the garden. I will probably end up making a whole video on this subject, but I want to try and keep it to natural meditation. If it feels good to meditate, obviously that's natural, but I have lots of experience in meditating, communicating, connecting with plants in the natural reality, from growing up, spending a lot of time in the bush around wildlife and wild plants. Also, when I was a teenager, I was trained by somebody who channeled our guides for over a year in a big garden. This was over 20 years ago, teaching me how to connect with plants, figure out what their use was, what vibrational frequency they held. So I have a lot to say about connecting with plants, but I want to share with you an experience that happened naturally. And even though I'd been working deeply and spiritually with plants for over 20 years. When this experience happened, it's because I implemented the natural systems. That's why I got this deep spiritual, meditative, download channeling experience from my own little front yard garden in Richmond, Melbourne. So that's why I've gone to such an extreme effort to explain the actual hands-on gardening way of creating a natural magical garden in your system. And you can say, well, it's not natural because you did it, but we are natural. We are a part of this system, and falling back into alignment and using the laws of nature, the blueprint of Mother Earth to build our gardens is one of the most natural things we can do. After all, we can do it, and it's right, and it's natural, and it helps the ecosystems just like every other being that's in alignment on this earth. So I do consider them natural gardens, even though they're man-made, because when we make them, we're making them naturally, and we are making them as one with nature. We are one with nature when we're making these gardens. And I think that's why after over 20 years of working spiritually with nature, with plants, with gardens, for the first time after 20 years, I had my own true breakthrough or mega spiritual magical event. And it wasn't the result of the completed natural garden that I made that gave me the experience. The experiences started happening as I was creating the natural garden. And my intention to build a magical natural garden for free. I didn't want to spend any money on it. I wanted to use whatever I could around me to substitute for store-bought fertilizers and anything else you would buy from a shop. So that intention, I don't know how to put it, I just started knowing things. I just started doing the right things. I just started compiling mulch. My brain just started telling me that there were certain good things in this natural waste, in fruit skins, in leaves, in old weeds, in everything. I just kept getting the feeling and the urge it had to go back to the soil. So that's how it started. And I didn't know I was channeling anything at this point. So I kept doing all these things that seemed kind of crazy, and it even drove some of my housemates crazy because the garden was covered in all this mulch. And even one day my housemate, with good intentions, cleaned up all the mulch and threw it in the bin, and when I saw it, I just felt like all my skin had been ripped off. I felt like the skin, all the protection had been taken off my garden. It literally felt like my garden was skinned and the insides were exposed to the hot sun, and I had seen all the life that was in the soil under the mulch, and I knew that that was all dead. And yeah, so I was starting to connect with this force. I was becoming one with the garden, feeling what the garden felt, knowing what the garden needed, craving what the garden was craving. I would start acquiring different kinds of organic material. I would see things growing by the train tracks like fennel and different weeds, and I would start thinking, why not chop that down for mulch? And I basically implemented a hardcore advanced permaculture system, and at the time I didn't even know what the word permaculture meant. I knew nothing about organic gardening, eco-gardening, and my garden boomed that year. It was an attraction. It was an attraction of the suburb and created a whole beautiful community that rippled out with everybody letting their gardens spill over, people even taking down their fences to add to this garden fantasy that was happening in our neighborhood, and different neighbors taking me into their back gardens to show me what they were doing, and it just started this whole ripple effect of amazingness. Again, no training in eco-gardening or natural gardening. I'd watch my family mix manure into their vegetable gardens, and literally that was the extent of my family training on how to build soil. And I did get overexcited and make a few mistakes. The main one being getting too excited using coffee grinds, not realizing how acidic they were. But other than that, I really was just flowing like an advanced, experienced eco-gardener. So I was totally unaware I was in this flow. I was unaware of how I had achieved something that experienced gardeners were coming and asking me for advice and assuming I was an experienced gardener. I was an experienced naturist, but I didn't consider myself, I didn't even think that anything I was doing was that special. I thought I was just using common sense. And then I started getting gardening jobs offered to me, high-paying gardening jobs, and I was really uncompromising with my technique. One, because I didn't know any other technique to fall back on, and two, because I was almost addicted to it, or it just felt so good and felt so right, and I didn't want to get paid for doing anything else. And if a paying client would tell me to use poison or to do something that was unnatural, even they would think I was a professional, but in my head I was thinking I'm an amateur, and I would just stand up and be strong and say, no, this is how we're doing it. And when I started talking, information would start coming out of my mouth that I didn't even know. It was like Mother Earth had possessed me, and anytime I needed information on any subject to do with natural gardening, it would either just fall out of my mouth or I would just start doing it without realizing, and then it would be done. And I consider this channeling, like your body is literally channeling actions. A higher force is working through you. You've tapped in to the great intelligence which knows all things, which we're all one with, just tapping into a frequency where this is common sense. So by this point, I'm just thinking I'm a garden wizard and this is all just magic, which it is, but there's hard science behind everything I did, which I later learnt. So you can literally let your body become a channel for this intelligence, and this intelligence is the force of nature. It does want things to flow, to grow, to build these. This is what it would do anyway if we weren't in the way. So becoming one with it and doing it yourself is a great way to be yourself. And all you need to do to slip into this vibration, to connect with this vibration, is to have the intention upon building your garden or working with your garden that everything you do is going to be the best you can do for all life around you, for all life around the garden. So by using your garden waste to boost your soil, to feed your plants, you're cutting out harmful processes, like when you throw it in the bin, then it has to go through processing at the rubbish dump, has to be transported here, has to be processed there. That all takes fuel, manpower, waste. By having the intention, everything you do is for the good of all, and being unwilling to compromise just because you feel like there's a hurdle in your gardening project and it would just be so easy to go to the shop and buy this product. Just think of it as a game, think of it as a challenge. Just because you don't know the solution today doesn't mean there aren't 100 solutions around you. That's what I really learnt. The more solutions you find, the more keep coming. And you can really experiment and mix them together, do them all at different times. And the solutions will come to you. You'll find them because you're always looking, because your mind's in the game. You're literally aligning with life, because this is what life is naturally doing, always looking to incorporate, feed back into itself and multiply in abundance and beauty. It seems so weird to explain, and such a weird thing in general, that aligning with this energy, you roam around looking for organic scrap matter to run back into your soil, and looking for different plants, and it's very physical, but that's the physical side of this magic. That's what the laws of nature, that's what trees, bugs, animals living their natural lives, this is what they naturally do, build ecosystems and create these conditions to build more forests, more plants, more life. And even after 20 years of living this internally and mentally, and then going into natural environments and having my experiences, just by doing it myself, doing what nature does, that was such a level up in vibration for me. And I haven't even got to the best part of the story, but I've read so many new age, metaphysical, spiritual books, and I love so many of them. But the information I learnt from this first year of connecting with that energy encompasses most of what I learnt over my lifetime till then, studying and reading books. So, on to the highlight of the story. So by the time my garden was really thriving, I had a bean tunnel. I named my garden, whatever feels right, I like to embrace that, and it just felt like the tunnel of love. So I would sit in this tunnel of love every morning and drink my cup of tea and nibble on beans and just admire the garden. And I was just entranced by the plants. I'd been through all the soil building, all what seemed crazy to me, and now I had these results which the whole neighborhood thought I was now a professional gardener. And I was just living this garden magic fantasy, not knowing any of the science behind it, and eating my beans and drinking my tea and slipping into this blissful meditative state every day. And I started receiving huge downloads of information. In fact, most of the information I received in 2 or 3 big downloads, and I call them downloads because it's not like somebody was talking to me. It's not like an invisible voice was saying blah 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 blah. It was like getting paragraphs, and you just get it all at once, and then afterwards you think back and read it over, if that makes sense to anyone out there. But I got big chunks of information, and the information I received is actually the information I've shared in this video, and that was around 6-7 years ago. It was around the same time I started this YouTube channel, and I was not only downloaded with information, but this electrified energy, and I had all this information, and I just knew it was true. And I started looking up YouTube videos and found the science was led to permaculture, and started realizing that what I did and the new information that had been downloaded through me was high science, was beyond what I knew, and I truly had found something special, and I wanted to share it with the world. And I wrote out a teaching called the Spiritual Greenhouse, which basically is this teaching. And I wanted to make a YouTube video and share it with the world. But in all honesty, I'd only been living that truth for a year, and I had stumbled into it. And even though I knew how important this truth of realignment with the natural systems to solve so many of our problems needed to be shared with the world, the great cosmic mother had other plans for me. I thought, I just know everything. I'm going to share this truth. I'm going to do a permaculture course. I'm going to get this certificate, make this video, go out into the world and cause this eco-revolution. But like I said, the cosmic mother was like, no, you're going to live this truth and prove yourself, not only prove yourself to the people around you and the outside world, but prove it to yourself physically, through the physical. That's what happened. Everything I've been speaking about throughout this video is what I lived in those years after those information and energy downloads. I ran a huge community garden full of decorative, medicine, magical and edible plants. I saw the lives of the people around change. I saw communities strengthen. I saw magic grow. I saw my own health and the health of others improve. I experienced my own mental health improve and watched the mental health of many, many other people improve as well. Literally everything I've been speaking about, I witnessed with my own eyes by living out this natural reality. As a part of this reality, not as a job, not as a career path or something I do to make money. It's got to be deeper than that to feel like you're a part of that. And when there's unnatural incentive, there's always the temptation of compromising and cutting corners, because it's not really about reality anymore. It's not about long-term sustainability. It's about short-term gain at the expense of reality. And there is a way to earn a living off living this way without compromising and turning it into a gimmick. Again, you've got to be open and follow what feels good for you. So that was my long personal story explanation on channeling in the garden naturally. It can just take over your body if you just do what feels right, even the littlest thing of breaking up some weeds and mulching it around a new plant. Those little inspirations, all those natural eco gardening ways that you feel inspired to do, that is channeling. That's letting your body become an instrument of the great mother, of the great intelligence. And then that can lead to further actually getting downloads of information, more specific information. The more you merge with these natural frequencies and feel yourself within them, feel who you really are. Are you animalistic? Are you an elven creature? Are you a fairy, a pixie, a caveman, a Neanderthal? Who are you? Are you a Viking? Are you who is your character in this system? What is your magical presence? What vibration? What is your higher self? What is your higher vibration? And embrace that, be that, move like that person, sing like that person, do what your higher nature dimensional self would do comfortably in that reality. Moving through your magical garden or natural spaces in the world like this, you'll find animals and other wildlife feel way more comfortable and will even come up and say hello, and you'll have those magical, mystical experiences of meeting animals face to face, animals that you usually wouldn't see. They'll expose themselves to you and you'll have a physical interaction, even just watching them play. Sometimes they'll come right up and sit next to you. Sometimes they'll protect you when you need it. The animals can really feel who you truly are in this system when you are yourself, and they know that you're no longer a threat, that you are for the good of all. You have reclaimed your place within oneness, and they can sense that, and it's truly amazing. And I have had so many of these experiences. There's no big one standout, but for instance, lizards will come and crawl on me. The same lizards that would usually run away and hide when I'm not in that mental state of oneness. Snakes as well. Snakes seem to really take a liking to me when I'm in that beautiful, blissful state, being in nature, and will want to come and sit and hang out and try and move into my garden, and I always have to have a chat with them. You know, I love that you're friendly and you want to hang out with me, but there might come a day when I step on you and your reaction will be to bite me. And the snake that likes to set up in my garden is the Australian brown snake. I think the deadliest snake in the world, or second or third most deadliest snake in the world. I also have a cat and a chicken, so I end up having to tell the snake to move on. One day I was just picking the lettuce at that garden that you saw images from where I work earlier on in the video. I was just picking the lettuce in the garden, and there was a beautiful owl in the garden just sleeping in the lettuce. Like, how often do you get that close to an owl? And then it just flew up in the tree above me and hung out with me while I harvested the lettuce. Okay, here's probably the standout story about animals, especially in my own natural magical garden. One day I came out into the garden, and there's footage of this on my channel. There's footage. If you look at the echidna footage somewhere on the channel, there's footage of an echidna, and I walked out into the garden and there was an echidna, and it was terrified of me. It just burrowed itself into the soil and there was nothing I could do. And so I thought, if I can get myself into that state, maybe I can have some fun with the echidna while it's here. So I just instantly lowered myself into that higher state and became one with everything. And literally when I hit that sweet spot in my mind, the echidna unfurled and came out, and not only was friendly towards me, but followed me around the garden for the day like a little puppy dog, a wild echidna. And that was really special. I just spent the day with this beautiful echidna because it felt my heart, it felt the truth of who I was and my intentions. And yeah, that footage is on the channel. Now, I live in Australia, and anybody who has echidnas around, like, they're very wild. They will always scurry away from you, or they don't run very fast, so if they can't get away, they just clamp onto the ground and try and bury themselves in, and they're covered in spikes, so they're not nasty creatures, but they're very shy. So to have an echidna follow you around the garden, an unknowing person would think that I had maybe saved that echidna and reared it as a baby, and that's why it followed me. But that was an echidna I had met in 5 minutes, and going from terrified of me to following me around and wanting to play. That's magic. That's natural magic in the garden. That's just naturally being yourself, and that's just a naturally magical experience that comes from that. Now I have an example that combines the meditative channeling magic with animal magic, and also the natural plant medicine magic, the psychedelic medicine. This was many years ago. I must have been around 19, 20, and I'd been taking psychedelics, magic mushrooms, I think, and I was the night before was a bit unclear, but it was the next day, and we were in the rainforest in Queensland, and I was totally unfamiliar with this environment, but from experience I knew how to slip into that higher dimension. At that stage, still not knowing exactly what I was doing, but I knew when I was in that dimension that I was more protected and more in tune with my environment. And I was barefoot, and there was snakes and spiders everywhere, so I wanted to run through the bush like an animal. I just had that urge, so I veered off from my friends and went for a little run through the bush. And I was running flat out through the bush, relying on my intuition, on where to put my feet at the last second every time, just really in that beautiful flow. And all of a sudden in my head, I just heard, "Stop!" The most clearest, sharpest voice just saying, "Stop!" And I was having so much fun running. I was in a really good mood and happy, so I felt like it was, like Simon says, I don't know, we just stopped. Like, I stopped really fast, and I remember I had a big smile on my face, and I stopped mid-run with one foot still in the air. So I was frozen in a running position, and I waited. I knew that I was getting some kind of higher message because an invisible voice screamed at me to stop, so I waited for the next part of the message and nothing came. I stood there frozen. I'm like, and what? What am I supposed to do? Just freeze? And then when I gave up on getting any more of the message and went to put my foot on the ground, there was a snake right in front of me. If I would have put my foot on the ground and not stopped at that exact second and froze, I would have stepped right onto a snake. So I channeled stop. I heard that so clearly, and it saved my life running through the bush alone in that higher dimensional nature reality. And I believe that also because I had plant medicine, magic mushroom, fungi medicine in me, that helped me tune into an unfamiliar ecosystem and to stay safe and still have fun and play and be myself and be one. This is how humans naturally lived. This is where we came from. This is our natural magic that we can just tune into, just fall into by following what feels good in the moment, while holding that intention of oneness, of being of benefit to all and yourself as a part of that all. And the more we rise in frequency through the dimensions, these physical, tangible, magical effects just become normal. You can also slip into more silent communication with others where you don't have to talk as much, but are still sharing information, even when working together, building natural ecosystems, adventuring together in nature. You'll find there's a natural communication that you just know what the other's thinking. You can just feel the other's energy field, and naturally results in less verbal communication, but a higher, more honest, more easy, more flowy kind of communication. Now, if you're actually a gardener, someone who's passionate about working with plants, I've personally found, and this may be different for others or this may be a common occurrence, I've personally found that the plants, seeds and bulbs will appear to me in dreams when they want to be planted, or if I've planted a new type of seed and I'm worried that I've done it wrong, I'll dream. If the seed's still alive, I'll dream about seeing the seed under the soil. And this has happened so many times. And every time I see the seed germinating and growing under the soil, it's showing me that in real life, yes, the seed is still alive. If I have bulbs in a drawer that I've forgotten about, I'll dream about them when they need to be put in the ground. I've really found that plants have been revealing themselves to me in dreams when they need attention at different times of the year. And this has become a total normal part of my life, not a one-off or a magical sometimes experience. This is generally what happens when I've forgotten about a plant, or if I'm worried about a plant. I'll either be reminded or reassured through my dreams. And we'll end this all up by looking at the bigger picture of this natural magic by creating these natural ecosystems all around us when we work in the garden or on gardening projects. So there are ley lines, energy lines all around the earth. There's a grid system as energy flows, the magnetic poles. There's lots of invisible energies flowing around that are stifled at the moment or corrupted with unnatural man-made things built on top of them, placed on top of them, worked on top of them, and these corrupt the flow of energy around the world, this natural prana, life force, electrical, magnetical flow that actually reflects the flower of life geometry in a donut shape, the torus they call it, this natural flow of energy around the world. And by creating these natural ecosystems, by restoring them on the earth, on these energy lines, we replenish and cleanse the flow of energy that's flowing through all of us around the world. And like a web, all these natural ecosystems link up through the energy grid of Earth, as the healthy, sacred geometric frequencies pulse through the planet and run through our gardens. As they run through our gardens, they take on that beautiful energy and take it with them to the next place to heal centers of energies that need healing or need more light. They also connect up and are empowered by everyone else's eco gardens on the planet, creating a web of life, the natural web of life, re-stimulating that web of life that created and sustains all life on this planet. So not only building a naturally magical eco garden, not only can it help you with your mental state, with your physical health and fitness, with your community, with your immediate surrounding environment, with your magical experiences, mental, physical, spiritual evolution and alignment, it can also help to bring peace and harmony to the whole world, which then radiates through the whole universe. Of course, everyone's not born to be an eco-gardener, but we all do need the ecosystem to survive. So even if it's not your role in this lifetime to spend the majority of your time in the garden, you can always pay someone to do it for you, or you can share your land, your space with people in your area who want more space to revive and regenerate, or to grow plants in, to grow food, and they can share the food with you and your space. You'll then be surrounded by that good energy and contributing in whatever you think the best way for you is to contribute. Because the fact of the matter is, as humans, as a race, we've destroyed so much of these life-giving ecosystems around the world that it's not compensating for our damage any further. And ideally would be born into a world that didn't need any repair work, into a world where we weren't polluting more than the environment can cope with. But that's where we find ourselves born into. So for the future of humanity, the responsibility has fallen onto us to keep living this destructive delusion, or to start living the actual solution. Aligning yourself with the laws of nature, with the actual solutions, you yourself will actually radiate out that healthy frequency along with the garden you've created. And the more you strengthen your mindset in this, the more you live this truth, experience it and know it as a reality, the strength of that frequency, of that energy, is enough to guide others around you. Energy likes to play follow the leader of the highest and strongest energy. Other energies will align to that. So by having all these magical eco gardens around the world with their magical guardians maintaining them, is like a spider web of light helping to raise the frequency of the whole planet. This video is kind of like the inner workings, the mechanics, the backstory of natural magic in the garden. So when I cover other topics, they're rooted in this powerful foundation, which is universal to the other magical gardening topics I'm going to be speaking about in the future. I'm not exactly sure what the other videos are specifically going to be like just yet, but I know I want to make one on magical, shamanic, hallucinogenic plants. I'm just waiting till they all grow and look good this summer. I would like to make a video about meditating in the garden, communicating, talking with plants. I'd like to make a video about natural tools in the garden, crystals, frequency, music, sound, singing. I'd like to make a video on magical herbs and healing, preparing magical brews and potions and balms, and I'd like to make a video on magical rituals, chants, some witchy kind of magic. And who knows what else I'll be inspired to do, but it looks like it's going to be a long journey making these videos, because putting all this information together in a clean, understandable way while gathering the footage, editing it, la-di-da, all that stuff takes time, but I'm here for it. So until the next episode of Magic in the Garden, thanks for watching and have fun, everyone. May the goddess of the garden
Chare, chare,